All right, let's just dive right in. For the next few minutes, I want you to try and forget almost everything you think you know about reality, about objects, about time, about existence itself. We're going to build a new model of the universe, and we're going to do it from the ground up, starting with one single, powerful idea. So let's kick this off with a core question, a really fundamental one. We tend to see the universe as being full of things, right? Planets, people, particles, and these things then go and do stuff. They act, they interact. But what if we've had it completely backwards this whole time? What if the acting, the interaction itself, is what's truly fundamental? And here it is. This is the core paradigm shift we're talking about. On the left, you've got the old view, the one that just feels intuitive. Reality is made of things, and those things then interact. But look at the new view on the right. It flips it completely on its head. Reality is made of interactions, and when those interactions form stable, repeating patterns, they simply appear to us as things. We're basically shifting from a noun-based universe to a verb-based one. Now, I know this might sound a little abstract, maybe even a bit out there, but what's so incredible about this worldview is that we can build it from just three simple, self-evident truths. Axioms that we can pull directly from our own immediate experience, without having to assume anything else. And here they are. It's actually really simple. First, experience is happening. You can't deny it because the very act of denying it is an experience. Second, awareness is present with that experience. You are aware of the experience. And third, those two are always connected. You can't have one without the other. They're interrelated. And that's it. Seriously. These three axioms are all we need to start building an entire universe. So how do we get from these simple truths to, well, everything else? This is where it gets really mind-bending. Because from just these three axioms, we can logically derive some of the most fundamental concepts we know, like time and even identity, without ever needing to assume some pre-existing thing was there to begin with. So let's start with time. How do you get time? Well, first, you have an interaction that can fold back on itself. It can engage with its own history. When this happens, it creates what this model calls a registration. Think of it like a footprint in the sand, an imprint of the event. It's the universe making a little note of itself. And finally, what happens when you have a sequence of these footprints, one after another? You get an ordered record, a path. That ordered record is what we experience as the flow of time. This is so crucial. In this view, time is not some universal clock ticking away, and it's not a dimension we're all traveling through. No, it's an emergent property. Time is simply the structural ordering of these interaction events. It's the sequence that gets created as the universe constantly engages with and records itself.
Okay, that's time. But what about objects? Things. Where do they come from? Well, it's a very similar process. Step 1. Some interactions happen in stable, repeating patterns, mostly because they're compatible with all the other interactions happening around them. Step 2. This recurring pattern keeps its shape, its structure, even as it engages with other patterns. Think of a whirlpool in a river. The water molecules are always changing, but the whirlpool's shape persists. And step 3. This stable, persistent pattern of interaction is what our brains perceive and label as an object or an identity. So a rock isn't a static substance. It's just a very, very stable process of interaction.
This quote just hits the nail on the head. We think of a coffee mug persisting through time. But in this model, persistence is just a pattern that's really good at staying a pattern every time it's engaged with. It's an active, dynamic process, not the simple survival of a static chunk of stuff. Okay, so this is all a really neat idea, but does it actually hold up? Well, the real test is to throw it at some of the biggest, weirdest paradoxes in modern physics. And this is where the interaction-first model really begins to shine, because it offers these elegant, simple solutions where the old thing-first model gets totally stuck. Let's start with a famous one, the observer effect in quantum mechanics. The standard view gets all tangled up in weird questions about whether a conscious person has to look at something to make it real. The interaction view just cuts right through that. It says, hey, it's not about consciousness. Any interaction, any engagement at all, a photon hitting an electron, whatever, forces a registration. A record is made. Potential becomes actual simply because an interaction happened and was recorded. The observer can be just another particle. Okay, next up, time dilation. With relativity, we're told that time itself literally slows down near a black hole, or when you're moving fast. In this model, it's a little different. It's the density of registrations that changes. Near a massive object, interactions and their little recordings just happen less frequently. So time isn't stretching. The rate at which that part of the universe updates itself has just slowed way down.
And what about spooky action at a distance? Quantum entanglement seems totally baffling if you think about two separate little particles that are somehow magically linked. But the interaction view asks, what if they were never truly separate to begin with? What if they're two expressions of a single shared pattern? Well then, of course, when you interact with one part of the pattern, the entire pattern registers a state all at once. It's not spooky communication, it's just one thing happening.
So as we start to zoom out, you can see this isn't just about reinterpreting physics. It's a completely new way of looking at how change itself happens. It's much less about force and cause, and much more about, well, compatibility and constraint. This is really the central mantra. Reality isn't made of stuff, it's made of happenings. The entire universe is a verb, not a noun. Every single thing you see is just a stable process, a recurring event, an occurrence.
Our normal model for change is this straight line, A causes B, which causes C. Linear causality. This interaction model suggests something totally different, constraint resolution. I want you to imagine a giant web of all possible interactions. Now, not all of them are compatible with each other, right? So a whole lot of possibilities get ruled out automatically. Change, then, is just the universe resolving this web into a coherent state. Nothing causes the next moment. It's simply the only configuration that's left after all the contradictions cancel each other out.
So what this means is that whenever we run into a paradox in science, this model suggests that it's not reality that's broken, it's our interpretation of it. A paradox is just a signal, a flashing red light telling us that our old, thing-first way of thinking has reached its absolute limit. It's a clue that we need to shift our perspective. Okay, we've gone all the way out to the cosmos. Let's bring this all the way back down to a personal level. Where do you and your immediate experience of this very moment fit into this grand interactive picture? The now moment, this experience you're having, isn't just a tick on a clock that's moving from the past to the future. In this view, the now is the active living boundary where that whole web of potential interactions resolves into one single coherent, actualized experience. The now is the very event of the universe crystallizing into form, and your awareness is kind of like the interface where that crystallization is taking place. And this leaves us with a final and pretty staggering thought. What if your consciousness, your subjective experience right now, isn't something separate from the universe, just looking in on it? What if your awareness is actually a fundamental part of the process itself? What if your experience of now is simply the universe experiencing and recording its own becoming through you?